So we're going to roll right into Mr. Todd Denkin. He's the creator of the Smuggleverse, which is like an NFT for your weed. On top of he is the president and founder as well as DigiPath, where if you're in the state of Nevada, where you should probably be getting your weed tested, and he loves aspergillosis, word on the streets. That's right, it's Mr. Todd Denkin.
Old lover of aspergilluses.
Just going to get a side of aspergilluses.
Right. Speaking of that,
get a t-shirt made.
The aspergilluses that they stopped testing up in Oregon, it's just dumb. It is easy to test. It's tested with qPCR, and it really tests for presence of or no presence of. So there's no plating of it, so there's no counting it. There's no limit. It's either it's there or it's not. So the way to really change the aspergillus law is to give it a felony count like they do for yeast and mold. Give it a limit, but it's either there or it's not is how it's tested currently.
Shout out BioRad for their qPCR work. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a BioRad at our office. We also have a BioMariU, and we use free DNA removal, where we remove the dead DNA of the aspergillus. So we're only testing for live DNA. We're the only lab in Nevada that does that. Here's a shameless plug. Call DigiPath Labs no, I'm just kidding. So speaking of testing, that's what my story is about today. A study found that 92% of illegal cannabis samples contains pesticides. A recent study published in the Journal of Cannabis Research found shocking evidence of the presence of pesticides in illegal versus legal cannabis from Canada. And high levels of pesticide found in illicit cannabis inflorescence compared to licensed sampled in Canadian study using expanded 327 pesticides multi-residue method. Researchers compared 36 cannabis samples gathered from licensed dispensaries, 24 from illegal businesses, which was seized by law enforcement and submitted to Health Canada and then lab tested. Researchers tested the samples for traces of 327 pesticides. They found that many of the illegal cannabis samples contained harmful chemicals. Quote from the paper, pesticides were detected in 92% of Canadian illicit cannabis inflorescence samples, with 23 unique pesticide active ingredients quantified. For pesticides and synergists, clobutanol, paclobutrazol, peronyl butoxide, and pyrethrins were detected as high sample frequency 8 to 17 times, a total of 24 illicit samples. Also noted that one illegal sample contained 9 pesticide ingredients. On average, the illegal samples contained 3.7 different pesticides, with 87% containing more than one pesticide. Researchers provided a table showing which pesticides were found between the licensed and illicit samples. Only 6% of the licensed samples tested positive for pesticides, which included clobenol and myclobutanol, very common in cannabis cultivation. Researchers discussed the main objective of their study was to streamline and expand our existing cannabis inflorescence method. The process included cannabis flower for being homogenized in a laboratory blender, combined with a solvent called acetonitrile, and then it's extracted with a device called a genogrinder. It's centrifuged and more in order to obtain an inflorescence sample in a vial for testing. The study demonstrates a new streamlined and expanded method for the detection of 327 pesticides in cannabis, gas chromatography, triple quads, mass specs, and also liquid chromatography, triple quad mass specs. Ultimately, they noted that studies of this nature are not yet common. To the author's knowledge, this study is the only extensive pesticide multi-residue analysis that compares pesticides in the licensed and illicit cannabis markets nationwide. Study concluded, albeit being a small study, our result to support the Government of Canada messaging where, quote, consuming illegal products could lead to adverse effects and other serious harms. Testing of illegal cannabis has found contaminants, pesticides, and unacceptable levels of bacteria, lead, and arsenic. Stark difference between the safety of legal cannabis products and dangers of illicit cannabis. This study proved the efficacy of Canada's cannabis industry. In October 2019, a nonprofit called Beyond Pesticides A letter to Congress calling representatives to protect the public from harmful pesticides in cannabis. On Pesticides wrote, pesticides use on marijuana is illegal because marijuana is not a legal agricultural crop under relevant federal law. Hemp has only recently been legalized. EPA has not evaluated the safety of any pesticide on marijuana plants. EPA has established no allowances for pesticide use in cannabis production and no tolerances nor any exemptions from tolerances for pesticide residues on cannabis. The absence of federal regulations governing pesticide and cannabis program, use of pesticide is not registered by the EPA and is illegal. Most states use is their Department of Agriculture's list. What they used in Nevada was Crop Group 19, which is the crop group for herbs and hops. That's how they created their pesticide list. On Pesticides also published a more recent article about the past and modern pesticides issues with cannabis, recommending that precautionary approach be adopted by states in order to protect consumers. Given the absence of federal testing for pesticide effects on cannabis consumers, producers, and the environment, states should establish rules for sustainable production practices that safeguard public health and the environment. On Pesticides recommends a systems-level approach to cannabis production, mandating compliance with national organic standards. Back in September 2019, 1,000 people became sick and 18 people died of a then mysterious vaping illness. Ultimately, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention announced the culprit to be vitamin E acetate in e-cigarette and vaping products. E-Valley, which is the cigarette or vaping product use associated with the lung injury. Though vitamin E acetate is considered to be safe when taken orally or topically, inhaling it can coat the lungs and lead to issues with breathing, among other concerns. Events of this crisis greatly increased awareness regarding ingredients for inhaled products. Cannabis products have also previously been recalled due to unsafe levels of mold. In November 2022, Colorado regulators issued a safety advisory regarding tainted product batches. Earlier this year, in January, the Nevada Cannabis Compliance Board issued a public safety announcement regarding the use of unapproved pesticide called ethafon on cannabis products. Affected products included an estimated 117 edibles, 41 pre-rolls, more than 200 concentrates were sold at many Nevada dispensaries. Earlier this year in February, Vermont legislatures announced a recall for cannabis grown with Eagle 20, which was reportedly causing headaches and nausea in consumers. As a policy around pesticides continues to develop, these samples stress the importance of education about pesticides and other substances used in the growth or production of cannabis products. It's always a safe bet to obtain a certificate of analysis from a cannabis company or business to verify that your product has been properly tested. I'm Todd Dankin with High at 9 News. What do you guys think about these tainted products?